Welcome to the Warp. I'm Jack Reda. I'm the designer of Cosmic Odyssey, which is the 7th expansion for Cosmic Encounter. It's like 3 expansions in one because it adds a lot of new stuff. It has a campaign in it, and it also expands variants from the previous expansions and base game as well. So a lot of value in there. One of the new things that it adds to this Fantasy Flight edition of Cosmic Encounter are moons. Now, moons are something that have been part of Cosmic Encounter in its previous editions, the Eon edition and the Mayfair edition. When it was first published in the Eon edition, it consisted of 100 paper-thin little moon discs, very small, and on the back they had the name of the moon and a number and a separate sheet that listed the effects of all the moons. And you would put 2 of these moons in your system. Players could attack a moon instead of attacking a planet, and if they succeeded, they would occupy that moon and it would give them some benefit or effect. Some of them were temporary or one-shot, some were ongoing. It was an interesting idea. The execution was okay. When Mayfair published it in their More Cosmic Encounter expansion, they had more than 100 moons. They put them on thicker cardstock, and on the backs it had an icon that showed you the category, and there were 4 categories of moons, plus the description of the effects were on the moon, which is pretty good. But that's some pretty small text on there. I don't know if you can even read that. It's pretty small. So the categorization was a good idea. You had 4 categories of moons. The full moons had effects that were very big on the game. Half moons were not quite as powerful. Quarter moons were much more minor. And then you had cheesy moons for all of the silly effects that were always a part of the game. And the mix of whether it was a one-shot or continuing was divided among all 4 of the categories. So categories are really just on the power of the moons themselves rather than anything about the effects themselves. It was a better implementation. The rules were still pretty much the same. And the big criticism that I think that most people had for moons was that it could slow the game down. If somebody is taking the time out to just attack a moon and they were not advancing their score, then they're prolonging the game. I think you could argue that it doesn't necessarily make the game that much longer if a person decides to attack a moon because they didn't think they were going to be able to win an encounter as the offense, then it's the same number of encounters overall. But again, the point was taken. So when I was looking at adding moons to the game, I wanted to look at what the criticisms were and see if I could find a way to improve upon the original concepts, as well as building on the categorization that Mayfair did, but try to move it a little bit further and make them even more interesting. When they introduced space stations in Cosmic Storm, a lot of people thought that, well, now they don't need to do moons because they've got space stations. But I never really agreed with that, and that was for 2 reasons. One was that they're not exactly the same. If you attack a player who has a space station on their planet and you win the encounter and take over that planet, you don't get the space station. You just take away their ability to continue using it. So that they're not quite the same. They're quite a bit different. And then, of course, Cosmic Storm only had 10 space stations. So going from 100 moons down to 10 space stations, not great. Now, we added 24 more space stations in Cosmic Odyssey, which is great, but I still felt that there was room for moons. So I'm going to break it down. We'll show you what we do is we've got 88 moons in Cosmic Odyssey, and they're broken up into several different categories. And you can tell from the backs of the moon cards, these are all the different types of moons that are in the game, including the one with the question mark in there. And yes, the effects are on cards. So similar to how they've implemented space stations, they have a cardboard token to represent the station, where it is, but the effects are described in more detail. We did play around with the idea of trying to put them on the moon, but that really tiny text, it seemed self-defeating. Plus, they beg to have phase information, like when do you play it, how do you play it as a main player, ally. All of that can be put on a moon card, as you can see from the bottom there. All that prerequisite and phase information is there at the bottom. So you can have a detailed explanation of the moon effect with the cards. So I'm fine with the way they've implemented the cards. So let's look at the different types of moons and what they do and how they were designed. And we're going to start off with the quarter moon. So we still have quarter moons in there. And the way they're revealed, you get the number of the moon and an icon that lets you, reminds you that's a quarter moon. And that's the card that you're going to be looking for. So as you're going through the cards, you're going to be looking for the quarter moons, and lo and behold, there it is. That is that moon, which is called the Peace Move quarter moon. And the way that moons are implemented overall is slightly different. So you might have noticed that there's a little bit of a bite taken out here of this cardboard token, which means that it's meant to go up against the planet. So you are assigning moons to specific planets rather than just having them out there free floating in your solar system, which never made a whole lot of sense, but rogue moons. Now, these are associated with a planet, and essentially the way it works is if you have a ship on a moon, it counts as being on that planet, and you don't actually attack the moons. You're still attacking planets normally. Whoever wins the encounter between those two main players can divert one of their ships from the encounter to the moon, and you can only ever have one ship on a moon. Allies can never put their ships on there, so it's always the main players. You can tell what type of moon it is, but you won't know the effect until it has been occupied. Now, moons that are in your system, you can look at and you know what their effects are. At the beginning of the game, you'll be dealt out 3 random moons, and you'll choose 2, and you'll choose where you're going to put them. And then you can decide how much you want to defend them. Because even as the defense, if you win an encounter as a defense, if you have any ships on that planet, you can move one of them to that moon if it is empty, and now you control the moon. So a little bit different than before. If in the old days, if somebody attacked your moon, you defended it, but you didn't get it. If you were the defense, you would actually have to attack that moon. So because the moons are part of the planet, and you're attacking the planets normally, it does not slow the game down at all, because you are basically doing a 2-for-1 there. So the quarter moons, let's take a look here. The way the quarter moons work is they are immediately revealed when they're occupied, and their effect happens right then, and then it doesn't do anything else. So it's an intermittent effect. If the moon becomes unoccupied, you're going to flip it back over to its face down side, and then the next time somebody occupies it, you turn it face up and trigger it again. So let's give you a couple of examples of the effects for the quarter moons. So this one's called Attack Preview. When revealed, each player must show you the highest and lowest value attack cards in their hand. So you get that little bit of information from all the other players once you occupy that moon. Migration. When revealed, move one of each player's ships to another of their colonies. So you do a little bit of a shuffle around there. Treasure Hunt. When revealed, each player gives you one card from their hand at random. You keep one of them and discard the rest. So that's a fun little effect. And there are 8 different quarter moons in the game. So 8 is going to be a recurring motif here. Cosmic Encounter plays up to 8 players, so I thought it was important that moons be divided up in multiples of 8 at a minimum, so that you can decide if you want to play a game with just quarter moons. Then everybody can have one of those moons, or you can say, all right, we're going to have everyone gets a quarter moon and everyone gets another type of moon, and lets you curate the type of experience that you want. I got this little handy dandy storage tray from Etsy. So I've got all my quarter moons in here. They all fit quite nicely. So let's go on. And now we're going to look at the half moons. So the half moons, they have a half a moon there, and there are 8 of those. The way the half moons work is they have an ongoing effect while you occupy a half moon. That basically gives you something, and if you occupy 2 or more half moons, then whatever it is you get from any given moon is actually doubled. So let's take a look at some of the half moon effects. If I can find those, here we go. Half moon. So this one's called Failed Deal, -1, -2. When you fail to make a deal, lose 1 fewer ship. And if you occupy at least 2 half-moons, you lose 2 fewer instead. So all the moons are going to be like that. We've got reinforce +2/+4. Add 2 to each reinforcement you play. And if you occupy 2 or more half-moons, you add 4 instead. New hand +1/+2. When you draw a new hand, draw 1 additional card or draw 2 additional cards. Rewards +1/+2. When you gain rewards, gain 1 more. Retrieval, when you regroup and you retrieve 1 additional ship or 2 additional ships. So that's how the half-moons work. It's not a cumulative effect, so you wouldn't retrieve +3 if you occupied 3 moons. It's just, it's binary. If you occupy 1 half-moon, you get the first part of the effect, and if you occupy 2 or more, you get the second part. So those are fun to have in the game. Let's take a look now at the full moons. So the full moons have an ongoing effect. So if you occupy a full moon, and I'm sure I've got some full moons around here. Yes, so that's what the full moons look like. Pretty straightforward. Now that is a moon base. That's not a full moon. So we find the full moons. Here they are. And yeah, the full moon icon's got a big yellow full moon. There are more than 8 full moons. So there are 12 of those. Not really a multiple of 16, so we did what we could. 88 moons is pretty good, but I wanted to have more variety between the types of moons. But the full moon effects, I think, are the most interesting. So because they are ongoing, they're going to have a bigger impact on the game overall. So this one's called Hand Limiter. When a player draws a new hand, they draw 3 fewer cards. 404, any revealed attack 40 is treated as an attack 4 and vice versa. So that could be a big deal. Gate version 1.1, the offense's ship limit is increased by 1. And Gate version 0.9, the offense's ship limit is decreased by 1. And of course, if you have both of those in play and occupied, then it's just normal. Omega Base, each foreign colony on this moon's planet is worth 2 foreign colonies. Ooh, that's a big deal. Deceleration, the number of encounters a player can have per turn is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 1. Acceleration, can you guess? Yes, the number of encounters a player can have per turn is increased by 1. Compassion, each main player must select and negotiate, if possible, in the planning phase. So, holy moly. So yeah, these can have a much bigger impact on the game. The full moons are a big deal. I like those. All right, so let's take a look at... we're going to look at something now called, we'll look at those in a minute. Let me bring up the moon bases. So the moon bases, here we go. They've got this little configuration on there. The moon bases mean that the moon itself counts as a foreign colony separate from the planet. So if you have a ship on a moon base and ships on the attached planet, then you have 2 foreign colonies. And what's interesting is that, let's say that you only have a ship on the moon base. Well, that also counts as a foreign colony on the planet. So you still have 2 foreign colonies by occupying it. Now, the trade-off, of course, is all these moon bases have a handicap that you must endure for as long as you occupy it. So this one is called Home Strong. This moon is treated as a foreign colony. You cannot win the game unless you have a colony on each planet in your home system. So, hello. 4 is enough. This moon is treated as a foreign colony. During the regroup phase, if you have more than 4 cards in your hand, you must discard down to 4 cards of your choice. So that could actually be pretty good, but not if you have a lot of really good cards. Streamlined. During the regroup phase, if you have 9 or fewer ships in the warp, send your ships to the warp until there are at least 10 ships there. Power pay. This moon is treated as a foreign colony. After you use your power, send one of your ships to the warp. So in each case, it's going to be something that unpleasant for the most case that you have to endure for occupying it. But, you know, in one turn, you could go from 0 colonies to 4 colonies by winning 2 encounters. And again, you know that that's a moon base. You just don't know what its effect is. And the same is true. Let's say that I attack your moon where you have a moon base and you win the encounter. You as the defense can divert one of your ships to that moon base, and that moon base counts as a foreign colony, even though the planet is a home colony. So, you got to keep that in mind too. Whenever you are attacking somebody, especially if you're one of the other players thinking about who to ally with, you got to understand you could be helping the offense get 2 foreign colonies, or you could be helping the defense get 1 foreign colony. So that can be a big deal. All right, we have looked at half moons, quarter moons, full moons, and moon bases. Let's take a look at the cheesy moons. So the cheesy moons, they look like this. And what's kind of fun about the cheesy moons is they're not actually numbered like the others are. They all go 1 to 8 or 1 to whatever. That's a -1. That's a 0. That's a whatever that is. That's a musical note. So all of them have a funny symbol that corresponds to their effect. So the cheesy moons, they've got the little green cheese look on them. So we have atrophy. During the regroup phase, each player must discard 1 card of their choice from their hand. It's kind of a mixed blessing, so you get rid of the chaff, stuff that you don't want, but then at some point, you're getting rid of stuff that you do want. Reboot, at the start of your turn, each player discards their alien sheet and draws replacements, not using game setup aliens. So if you occupy the reboot moon at the start of your turn, everybody is getting a new alien, and so that's going to have a pretty silly effect on there. Everyone's favorite, tongues. Each player must speak in rhymes. When a player is caught speaking without a rhyme, not including reading game text aloud, they send one of their ships to the warp. So rather famously, this is one of those moons that you love it or you hate it. Tune. At the start of your turn, sing a short song about your alien power, then gain a reward. So the original Moon tune, you just had to sing songs about your alien powers. You didn't get anything for it. So I tried to make this a little bit more interesting, get a reward for that. Here's another one of everyone's least favorite, Mind Blank. Each player must hum whenever they are not talking or breathing in. And when you're caught not humming, you have to send a ship to the warp. These two have a pretty big, silly effect. The discard deal. At the start of your turn, shuffle the discard pile and deal all the cards to all the players, starting with yourself. And then deck deal does the same thing with the deck. And then we have the game over moon. When revealed, the game ends. The player with the most colonies, including foreign and home colonies, wins. So yeah, I remember one game we spent half an hour setting it up, deciding on the variants, going through all the alien selection methods that we like to use, setting everything up. On the very first encounter, my friend John attacked the game over moon, occupied it, and the game ended on the first encounter. It was ridiculous. So, and then he put that moon in a little Ziploc bag so that he could make sure it was never included in another game again. So that, but we had to include it. We had to include it in there because some people like that sort of nonsense. All right, the next type we have are secret moons. So the secret moons, they've got the little question marks all over them. And the way these work is when you occupy a secret moon, you don't reveal it. You reveal it when you want to, and when you do, then you trigger its effect. So here we have Moon Solidarity. Reveal at any time. As an ally, add the number of occupied moons to your side's total. And that will be an ongoing effect once you reveal it. So you can decide to reveal it right away as soon as you occupy that moon, just so that everybody knows that you've got it. But sometimes you want to wait to reveal it to say like, you know what, I'm going to wait and see. There might be a better time to do that. This one's called Strengthen Allies. Reveal at any time. While you are an ally, allies' ships are worth double for totals, compensation, and rewards. So, yeah, you might wait to reveal that until you have joined an alliance, say with 4 ships, and then you're like, padow, look at that. This one's called Hubris. Revealed any time. You do not lose your alien power from having too few home colonies. The Spoils. When you gain rewards as a defensive ally, double the amount you gain. Stack. At the start of each turn, you may place a card from your hand face down on top of the deck. This one's called Jubba Cloak. It says, you cannot reveal this moon. This moon has no ability, but you should look pleased at having just read this. So there were a couple of worthless moons in the previous editions. We only included one. And Jubba Cloak is actually something from Dune. The original version of this moon was actually called Scubba Joke, but Fantasy Flight was like, what is Scubba Joke? What does that mean? And we're like, well, Scubba Joke rhymes with Jubba Cloak. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I was like, well, it's a joke that has to do with a worthless element from the Dune board game. And I'm not sure that it fully registered, but they're like, well, let's just call it Jubbacloak. And so I was like, all right, sure. It's all good. So that's what the secret moons do. Now we're going to talk about the blue moons. Now the blue moons are similar to the secret moons. So that's what the blue moons look like. We've got 8 of those. These you keep secret until you use them, but then when you reveal them, its effect happens that one time and then it doesn't happen again. And unlike the quarter moons, when you no longer occupy the blue moon, you don't turn it face down. So it's a once per game effect that you can have, but you can spring it on the players to let them know what it is. So here we have Hulk out. Keep secret until, as a main player, after cards are revealed, you may reveal this moon to cause each of your ships to be worth triple for totals, compensation, and rewards. So, holy moly. Hearthfire. Keep secret until, at any time, you may reveal this moon to force all players who have your flair to give it to you. If nobody can, you may search the discard pile for it and take it. So, yeah, get your super flair. This one's called 3 Enforce. As an ally, you may reveal this moon to triple the value of each reinforcement played by allies on your side of the encounter. So that can be a pretty big effect. So all the blue moons have pretty big effects because they are only once per game effect. So I like those. Once in a blue moon kind of a thing is what that means. The next one we're going to look at are the hub moons. So these are these little orange moons with a little connector motif there on the top. And the hub moons are meant to foster deals. They give you more things that you can do in deals. So this one's called Card Deal. As part of a deal, you and your opponent can each draw up to 2 cards from the deck. So that's just something that you are allowed to make happen as part of a deal. Normally you can't say, all right, yeah, let's do a colony for colony and you can draw 2 cards from the deck. That's usually not negotiable. Deal reward. After you make a successful deal, gain reward. So now again, you're incentivized to make a deal because you get more out of it. Discard deal. As part of a deal, you and your opponent can each discard up to 2 cards from your hand. Again, normally you're not allowed to do that. Renter's fee. After you make a successful deal, you may take a card at random from the hand of each player with a colony on this moon's planet. So you're getting something out of it, and if other people have a colony on that planet, then they're going to have to eventually pay the price for it. So all of these, they make deals a lot more interesting and exciting, which I love because I love deals. This brings us to our last type of moon. So that is the new moon. So the new moons, they've got the big question mark. And actually, the new moons are not really their own type of moon. The new moons are actually based on all the other moons. So you've got some blue new moons and some fulls and some cheesies, a secret one, and et cetera, et cetera. And the idea is that in most cases, you're going to be able to tell what type of moon somebody has. You're going to know, okay, over there, somebody's got a moon hub or somebody's got a blue moon on that planet. So I know if I attack it and encounter it, I know what I'm getting myself into. But with the new moons, you don't know. You don't know what type of moon it is. And that is to harken back to the original versions of the moons. This is what the Mayfair, they all looked like this. You had no idea what type of moon it was going to be until it was too late. So I wanted to be able to give that experience to players as well. So there's a good number of these new moons. There's 20 of them in the game. So you get a nice mix there. And again, you can have a game that has some new moons and some non-new moons so that you have got a great mix and you're not really sure. Or you can curate. You can say, hey, in this game, we're just going to be having the new moons so that it's kind of old school Cosmic Encounter. Not completely, although there's really nothing to stop you in most cases from playing with the old rules if that's what you want. There's a couple of moons that will, if the effects refer to, this particular planet. So if you want, you can weed those out. But give you an example of some of the new moons here. This one's called Moon Mandate. It's a full moon. To win the game, normally a player must also occupy at least 1 moon. So kind of amps up the stakes there a little bit. This one is a moon base effect. This moon is treated as a foreign colony. You cannot select your highest valued encounter card unless you have no other attack cards. So yeah, if you've got the 40, you can't play it unless it's your last card. That's how that one works. This one is a moon hub. Translation lost. When players make a deal, you may send your ship here on this moon to your colonies and flip this moon face down to prevent the terms of the deal from resolving. So it still counts as a successful deal. It's just nobody gets anything. So you don't lose anything. You're basically, you're bailing from it. And now somebody will have to occupy that moon again to have that effect happen again. This one's a blue moon, so keep secret until, it's called Deal Breaker. Keep secret until after you fail to make a deal, you may reveal this moon. If you do not lose any ships to the warp, and your opponent loses 3 additional ships. So, yeah, that's kind of a worse version of the previous moon. This one is a moon base, Careless. This moon is treated as a foreign colony. Each time you play an artifact, reinforcement, or flare, remove one of your ships from the game. Yikes. This one is a quarter moon. Flare magnet. When revealed, each player gives you all the flares from their hand. And then it doesn't do anything again until you turn the moon face down and it gets reoccupied. This one is a half moon. So it's called Home +1/+2. This moon is treated as a home colony and a half moon. If you occupy at least 2 half moons, this moon is treated as 2 home colonies and 2 half moons instead. So kind of a weird thing that helps you keep your alien power. And then, there's even a cheesy one here, Planetless. If a player does not occupy any planets, they win the game. Okay, so that is, that's the new moon. So it's a nice mix. I really wanted to maximize as much out of the moon experience. One, to kind of, for the nostalgia, I wanted to experience the joy I have always had with moons. I always liked to include moons in the game, and we typically played that you had to occupy at least 1 or 2 moons in addition to the 5 foreign colonies to win the game. That was how much we liked having moons in the game. So I wanted to get into that. I wanted to showcase how different they are from the space stations. And I just wanted to create interesting and new experiences with moons and maximize the playability by, the different categories. You can have a game where everyone has a cheesy moon, or you can say, we're just going to leave the cheesy moons out and play with the other moons. It's very modular, and it lets you really capitalize on what it is that you like best about the different effects. So you can say, yeah, we want to have ongoing effects. Or you can say, no, we only want to have temporary effects. We just want to play with the new moon, so we're not sure what we're getting because it's a little more, risky that way. So that is moons. Let me know what you think of moons. If you have some moon stories from previous editions, or in fact, any moon stories from this edition, if you've already picked up Odyssey. Yeah, let me know what you think of those. I've always loved moons. I'm a big fan. I'm so happy to finally have them in Cosmic Encounter, and I'm thrilled with how they turned out. I love the look of the tokens. I like how they fit snugly by the planets. I'm fine with the card effects being separate because we have that precedent with the space stations doing the same implementation. So there you have it. There are moons. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.